On December 21st, 1891, a class at the YMCA training school in Springfield, Massachusetts, played a brand new game for the very first time. You see, there was a genuine New England blizzard outside, so the students were stuck inside before computers or smartphones or tablets. So their PE teacher came up with an entirely new sport to keep his students occupied. Nobody had named the new game yet, but we now know it as basketball. Now, a more talented preacher would take this opportunity to spin the ball on their fingers or some such, but I'm not that person. I'm going to pass the ball. The first game finished with a thrilling score of 1-0. Back then, all shots were worth 1 point, and only one player made a shot in the peach baskets that had been nailed to the walls of the gym. The PE teacher's name was James Naismith, an interesting and peculiar man. He was a doctor and a Presbyterian minister, in addition to being a PE teacher. And after his game exploded in popularity, with games being played as far away as China and Japan, not even a decade after the very first game, a businessman came to Naismith's office one day to try to talk him into cashing in on the new game. He suggested that Naismith should insist on royalties. Every time a game of basketball's being played, Naismith ought to be able to cash in for this game. That's what this businessman was telling him. Like a good Presbyterian minister, James Naismith rose from his desk, was immediately enraged, and ran the man out of his office, insisting that profiting from the game of basketball was never his objective. I have a feeling if he were with us today, he would have some strong opinions about the level of commercialism in sports. Naismith had 13 original rules to basketball, and all of those rules were grounded in restriction. He believed the best way to keep the players of this new game safe was to prevent them from moving when they had the ball. So Naismith made a crystal clear policy when it came to running. It was rule number 3 on the 13 original rules of basketball. A player cannot run with the ball. And he structured the entire game around that one restriction. So to ignore this early commandment from James Naismith himself would be an affront to the game of basketball. Who would dare to transgress this clear guardrail with no shame whatsoever? Well, that would be the Yale basketball team. Now, Yale didn't acknowledge that they were actually breaking the rules when they started what we call dribbling. They did it under the guise of passing to themselves. Does that sound about right, Rowan? It was a clever Ivy League workaround, and the kind of approach one might anticipate from Yale. It didn't take long for fans and players of the new game to embrace Yale's change. James Naismith himself gave dribbling a hearty endorsement, calling it one of the most spectacular and exciting maneuvers in basketball. Naismith loved when players got creative in unplanned game time situations. A thriving game, he thought, welcomes innovation. Folk from outside of basketball have admired this about the game as well. Art critic Dave Hickey says that the players' responses to constrictions during the game, like the way the other team plays defense or the out-of-bounds lines, all of that somehow worked together to create moments of unspeakable joy. Heartbreak too, right? But we'll stay with the joy today, if that's okay. The art critic says in one of those joyous moments of a game, fans witness what he calls the triumph of civil society in an act that was clearly the product of talent and will be accommodating itself to liberating rules. Hickey says from a dunk to Dr. J to Jackson Pollock strip paintings, acts of defiance can actually become institutional edicts. After all, following the rules can be groovy, he says, but only if they're enforced for the right reasons. Only if they are used to liberating ends. The prophet Isaiah asks, "Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread? And why do you labor for that which does not satisfy?" Isaiah asks the question to Israelites who have been deported. As we watch the news and see folks shoved on to planes heading God knows where at the behest of our government, it is important to remember that as long as there have been empires, there have been deportations. Walter Brueggemann suggests that these verses are addressed to elite Israelites who have been deported to Babylon. And while they yearned to return home, while they wanted to go back to Jerusalem, it is clear that they have in some ways come to terms with the ways of Babylon. In a sense, it is a survival technique to get through exile. So in some ways, they participated in the opportunities and requirements of their captives. And as they did, little by little, piece by piece, over time, they undermined their identity as a distinctive Jewish people, with a distinctive call from Yahweh that put an emphasis on their neighbor, that put an emphasis on the beloved community, that ran counter to the swipe and go economy. So the folk Isaiah addressed were living in an uneasy arrangement that took care of some of their short-term needs while slowly asking more and more of their DNA, their very identity, their roots, what made them who they were in the world. So Isaiah invites the exiles to make a choice. Would they let go of the quid pro quo economy of consumption? Would they let go of an economy that demanded high results and then more high results stacked upon more high results? To make it plainer, I know it's Lent, and maybe some of us have decided to put something aside like junk food, potato chips maybe. God bless you if you're one of those people. Isaiah is kind of like, would you put away the potato chips? Because, man, in that moment, they taste pretty good. But the thing is, you can eat 10 more and be just as hungry as you were when you first opened up the bag. Isaiah tells the people of Israel that there is an alternative, another life-giving way. Isaiah invites the people to consider the banquet being held by the God who in times past had given Israel manna, bread, and water in the wilderness. Isaiah invites the people to consider giving themselves over more fully to the one who generously gives all that is needed for abundant life. Water without charge, milk without charge, wine without charge. This is exactly the kind of initiative that would be on Doge's chopping block. Because the economy of God has always ran against the quid pro quo economy of Babylon. Everyone who thirsts, Isaiah says, come to the waters. No exceptions. Lent is a time when we remind ourselves that we are always trying and failing to accept and live in to this invitation that God gives us. While God offers us abundance and lasting nourishment, we admit that so often we grab what's quick and unfulfilling. During these 40 days, we are invited to take a look at our lives and ask if there's any place in our lives where we have settled into habits and patterns that just do not nourish us anymore. I wonder, will we take the time over these 40 days to pay attention to how our money or how our time or how our energy is given over, is handed over to that which will ultimately not satisfy us? Throughout this text, Isaiah pleads with the people of God to listen, see, hear, seek, and ultimately return to the God whose mercy knows no end. Last week, I sent a message to our church, and it said that Crescent Hill is entering into a season of discovery. Just as the exiles were given a choice by Isaiah, a choice of following the rat race economy of Babylon or a choice of accepting God's invitation to abundant life, we, the people of this congregation, we have been summoned to hear the word of the Lord for this season in the life of our church. You see, Isaiah's prophecy had a purpose, And for Israel, that purpose was to return home to Jerusalem with a compelling clarity about who they were. A coveted people. Those beloved by God. Isaiah wanted the people of Israel to go back home knowing exactly who they were, knowing exactly what they were called to do, knowing that their ways were not God's ways, and knowing that nevertheless God would be with them every step of the way. The summons to an identity that empowered their calling is a summons Crescent Hill is being called to consider today. We have been summoned to listen to God's call for our congregational life. And in this time of transition, we are being called to listen and then respond to God's mission for Crescent Hill Baptist Church in 2025 and beyond. How is God inviting us to live out our faith together and with this neighborhood that we love? And how can we best use the resources we've already been given to join in God's kingdom being made more fully known now? All of these are questions that we've kind of been having with one another over the past several months. I've had them with you over coffees and lunches. We've heard them in ministry team meetings. We heard them in the congregational conversations we had when the Courier Journal articles came out last fall. And we have heard them asked even here in worship. These questions of our ministry and mission are important. And in this season, God is inviting us to slow down and listen. During Emmett's dedication, I was reminded of how important this season is in the life of our church, not only for ourselves right now, but for those who are in our midst now and who will be here long after we are gone. We must discern the moaning and groaning of God's world. We must see the Spirit moving and grab a hold. For if we are to help in bringing the kingdom of God to earth, then we have some work to do. But let's listen first. Let's figure out what that calling is. And then let's go with the Spirit of God urging us on and carry it forth. If basketball was still played with those 13 original rules that James Naismith wrote down in 1891, there would be no basketball fans in this room right now. The thing that make art critics and others look back and look at this game and admire the innovation is that the game has always met every change with a way to make the game play better. How can we do this better? The shot clock was put in because nobody wanted people standing there holding the ball for 2 hours. Who wants to watch that? Let's move around a little bit. Let's empower folk to use the gifts, the God-given talents they have. Let's empower them to use that to the best of our ability. And what if in this time of discovery for our church, God is asking us to pause and look at the resources we have, look at the calling we've been given, and then take what we have to move in the world with the Spirit of God, who is always and evermore moving in our midst. We have some examples of that already. Ways that this place is giving us life and nourishment. One way is kind of noisy. It's not basketball, it's pickleball, y'all. If you're around here on a pickleball evening on a Monday or Friday, some other evening in the gym, you will hear it. You will not only hear the ball, but you will hear the joy of folks coming together in this space in community to have a good time. And I've also seen that pickleball community come together and support and uplift and hold one another in nightmarish times in their lives. That's building community. And that's work that's already happening here. As we listen in the days ahead, I ask us to be mindful of these words of Thomas Merton. The danger with institutions is that the institution becomes an end in itself. What we need are people-centered communities, not institution-centered ones. That is the direction in which renewal must move. A few weeks ago in Birmingham, I had the chance with other CBF fellow minister friends to tour the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And if you've never been, if you find yourself in Birmingham, I commend that to you. Please make time to go and see that. They had the cell where Dr. King had written his letter from the Birmingham jail. You could see the actual cell in there. But one of the things I was most compelled to take a look at was some of the information they had on a woman who was active in Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, Dr. King's church in Montgomery, Alabama, and her name was Mother Pollard. And when the bus boycott was happening in Montgomery, Mother Pollard was one of the wise elders of the church, one of MLK's greatest confidants. And at the height of the bus boycotts, when they were not taking a bus to work, Mother Pollard, even in advanced age, would walk mile after mile from home to work every day. And one day, Dr. King said, Mother Pollard, this is just too hard for you. You're too tired. It's not worth it. Just you get on the bus. Don't worry a thing about it. And she looked at him and said, I'm going to keep on walking. I'm going to keep working for a future that will come one day, even if I'm not around to see it. So I'm going to keep on walking. And she said, after all, in that time when I'm walking, that gives me time to pray. That gives me time to listen. One day a reporter came up to her as she was walking and said, ma'am, are you tired? Are you tired of walking all this way every day? Aren't you tired? And she said, my feet is tired, but my soul is rested. Church, at the end of these wilderness days, may our souls be rested, and may our feet become tired with the good work of carrying the gospel of Jesus Christ to a world that needs it now more than ever. Amen.